My name is Nellie Fisher, 21 years old. People always say you'll remember your 21st birthday forever. Most people mean the parties, the drinks, and the embarrassing stories that somehow follow you for the rest of your life. I remember mine for a completely different reason. I remember it because it was the day I finally stopped making excuses for my family. It was the day I realized they hadn't forgotten me. They had simply chosen someone else. Looking back now, I can see the pattern clearly. My older sister, Vanessa, had always been the center of attention in our house. If our family had been a television show, she would have been the star whose name appeared in giant letters across every billboard, while I was the extra standing somewhere in the background. Mom and Dad Karen and Greg Fisher never even tried to hide it. When Vanessa barely scraped through a college course, they celebrated like she'd won a Nobel Prize. When I graduated at the top of my class, they congratulated me with a distracted smile before turning the conversation back to Vanessa. When Vanessa wanted a new car for her 16th birthday, she got one. When I needed a laptop for school, Dad told me to use the old family computer because it still worked fine. For years, I convinced myself it wasn't personal. Every family had favorites, didn't they? Besides, I kept telling myself things would change eventually. Once I became an adult, maybe my parents would finally see me as more than the responsible daughter who never caused problems. Maybe things would balance out. Maybe my turn would come. I spent years waiting for that day. It never arrived. Then came my 21st birthday. I wasn't expecting luxury gifts or a giant party. I wasn't asking for anything extraordinary. I just wanted to feel remembered. A birthday dinner, a cake, a card, a text message, anything. The morning of my birthday, I woke up feeling hopeful. 21 felt important, like a milestone, like one of those birthdays parents actually cared about. I grabbed my phone before even getting out of bed. Nothing. No messages, no missed calls, no notifications from my family. I frowned, but brushed it off. Maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe they wanted me to think they'd forgotten. I headed downstairs. The house was empty. No decorations, no breakfast, no balloons, no signs that anyone remembered what day it was. The silence felt strange, but I kept making excuses. Hours passed. 9 o'clock became 10. 10 became noon. Still nothing. I sat on my bed staring at my phone, waiting. Every vibration made my heart jump. Every time it turned out to be something else. By early afternoon, the pit in my stomach had become impossible to ignore. Finally, I called my mother. She answered after a few rings. "Nellie, I'm busy right now. What is it?" Her tone immediately made me feel like I was interrupting something important. I swallowed hard. "I was just wondering where everybody is." A brief pause. Then I quietly added, "It's my birthday." The silence on the other end lasted only a few seconds, but it felt much longer. Then came the sentence I would never forget. "Oh, right. We're out celebrating Vanessa's promotion. We'll catch up later. We'll catch up later." 4 words. 4 simple words that somehow managed to summarize my entire childhood. Not happy birthday. Not sorry. Not we forgot. We'll catch up later. As though my 21st birthday was an inconvenience. As though I could simply be postponed. As though I wasn't their daughter. The call ended shortly afterward. I sat motionless on my bed. My phone rested in my hand while my thoughts raced. At first I felt numb. Then memories started surfacing. Every achievement that had been ignored. Every accomplishment that had gone unnoticed. Every birthday where Vanessa had somehow become the center of attention anyway. Every time I had convinced myself things would eventually get better. The truth was impossible to ignore now. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was a decision. A deliberate choice. And for 21 years, they had been making that same choice over and over again. For a while, I just stared at the ceiling. Part of me still wanted to defend them. Maybe Vanessa's promotion was important. Maybe they'd celebrate with me tomorrow. No. Deep down, I knew better, because this wasn't about one birthday, it was about an entire lifetime. I finally picked up my phone and sent a text to the one person I knew would understand. My boyfriend, Mason. I typed only a few words. My parents forgot my birthday. I don't want to be alone. The response arrived almost immediately. Be ready in 20 minutes. That was it. No questions. No pity. No unnecessary sympathy. Just certainty. 20 minutes later, Mason pulled into the driveway. When I climbed into the passenger seat, he leaned over and kissed my forehead. Happy birthday, Nellie! I nearly cried. Not because of the words themselves. Because he remembered. Because he cared. Because he didn't need a reminder. Where are we going? I asked. He smiled. You'll see. Half an hour later, we pulled into his parents' driveway. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe dinner. Maybe a movie. What I walked into completely shattered me. The front door flew open before we even reached it. Nellie's here! Mason's mother, Linda, shouted. His father, Robert, appeared from the kitchen carrying grocery bags. Birthday girl has arrived. I stopped walking. For a moment, I couldn't speak. They knew. They had remembered. Linda wrapped me in a hug. Robert smiled warmly. Nobody asked why I looked sad. Nobody demanded explanations. Nobody made me justify my feelings. They simply welcomed me. Within an hour, the entire house had transformed into an impromptu birthday celebration. Linda found decorations in a storage closet. Robert fired up the grill. Mason disappeared and returned with a cake. The decorations weren't perfect. The cake wasn't custom made. Nothing about it was expensive. Yet somehow, it felt more meaningful than every birthday my parents had ever organized. Because this celebration wasn't built on obligation. It was built on love. As the evening continued, I found myself laughing. Actually laughing. For the first time all day. Nobody compared me to Vanessa. Nobody ignored me. Nobody treated me like an afterthought. I was simply allowed to exist, to matter, to belong. At one point, Robert handed me a drink and joined me outside on the patio. You doing okay, kid? I nodded automatically. Then I shook my head. He chuckled softly. Yeah, thought so. The evening sunlight painted the backyard gold, while distant laughter drifted through the open windows. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Robert said something that would stay with me forever. Milestones aren't about fancy parties. I looked over at him. They're about who's standing beside you when they happen. My throat tightened. Because while my parents were probably raising glasses to celebrate Vanessa's latest promotion, I was sitting beside people who had chosen to spend their evening making sure I didn't feel forgotten. And somehow, that realization hurt almost as much as it healed. Inside the house, Mason was trying and failing to light 21 candles without setting off the smoke detector. Linda was laughing at him. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone seemed genuine. And for the first time in my life, I found myself wondering whether family was really about blood. Maybe family was about showing up. Maybe family was about remembering. Maybe family was about making someone feel important without being asked. As the celebration continued, I caught myself checking my phone. Still nothing. No texts, no calls. No messages from my parents, no messages from Vanessa. It was as if I didn't exist. Mason noticed me looking. Without saying a word, he gently took the phone from my hand. They're not calling tonight. His voice was calm. And honestly, even if they do you want to answer? I looked around the room, at the people laughing, at the cake, at the decorations, at the warmth I had spent my entire life searching for. Then I looked back at Mason. For the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted my parents' attention anymore. Maybe what I wanted was respect. Maybe what I wanted was peace. Maybe what I wanted was a family that didn't need reminders to love me. And sitting there on the night of my forgotten 21st birthday, I made a decision. Karen. Greg. Vanessa. They were about to learn what happens when the daughter they've ignored for 21 years finally stops waiting for them to care. The next morning, I woke up in Mason's guest room with a strange mixture of emotions swirling inside me. Part of me felt lighter than I had in years. The other part felt completely shattered. Because no matter how wonderful the previous night had been, one question kept replaying in my mind. How do parents forget their daughter's 21st birthday? Not accidentally. Not for an hour. Not because of an emergency. How do they consciously choose to celebrate someone else instead? By noon, I checked my phone. Not because I expected anything. I think I just wanted confirmation. Proof that what happened was real. The screen lit up. Nothing. No missed calls. No birthday wishes. No apologies. No messages from Mom. No messages from Dad. Not even a lazy text from Vanessa, 21 years old, and apparently invisible. Mason walked into the kitchen while I sat staring at the screen. Still waiting? I shrugged. I don't know what I'm waiting for anymore. He poured coffee into a mug and slid it across the counter. Nellie, you deserve better than this. Simple words. But something about hearing them from someone else finally broke through all the excuses I'd spent years making. Maybe I did deserve better. Maybe the problem wasn't me. Maybe it never had been. That afternoon, I opened our family group chat. The same group chat that was mostly filled with Vanessa's selfies, Mom's passive-aggressive reminders, and endless conversations that somehow never included me. My finger hovered over the keyboard. For years, I had stayed quiet. For years, I had swallowed my feelings. For years, I had allowed them to decide how much space I was allowed to occupy in the family. Not anymore. I began typing. Thank you for making my 21st birthday unforgettable. Not because you celebrated it, but because you finally showed me exactly where I stand in this family. Don't worry about making it up to me. I won't be waiting. I stared at the message. Then I hit send. The response came almost immediately. Mom first. Nellie, stop being so sensitive. Of course, not an apology. Not regret. Just criticism. A few seconds later, Dad joined in. You're an adult now. Birthdays aren't that important. I actually laughed. The sound startled even me. Now birthdays weren't important? Funny. Vanessa's birthdays had always been treated like national holidays. Then came Vanessa's response. The one that finally pushed me over the edge. Oh my God, Nellie, are you seriously causing drama over a party? Grow up. I stared at the screen, my hands clenched. It wasn't about the party. It had never been about the party. It was about being forgotten, about being ignored, about spending 2 decades being treated like a supporting character in someone else's story. Mason looked over my shoulder and read the messages. Then he said something surprisingly simple. Block them. I looked at him. Just like that? Just like that. The idea felt terrifying. Not because I disagreed, because I'd spent my entire life being the good daughter, the understanding daughter, the patient daughter, the daughter who never complained. Blocking them felt like rebellion. It felt like betrayal. Yet another voice inside me whispered something different. Maybe it was survival. I thought about every achievement that had gone unnoticed, every sacrifice, every disappointment, every time I had waited for them to care. Then I blocked them. Mom, Dad, Vanessa, one by one. When it was done, I sat back in my chair, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. The silence felt different now, peaceful, liberating. But the story didn't end there. People like my parents didn't simply accept consequences. 3 days later, an email arrived. The subject line read, "We need to discuss the future." I immediately knew it was Mom. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. The email was exactly what I expected. Several long paragraphs about family unity, respect, forgiveness, obligations. Then came the real reason she had written. If you continue distancing yourself from this family, we may need to reconsider your place in our will. I read the sentence twice. Then I burst out laughing, actually laughing. After everything that had happened, they still believed money was the answer. They thought threatening my inheritance would bring me crawling back. They thought I was staying because I wanted something. The truth was almost funny. I had spent years hoping for love, not money. I forwarded the email to Mason. His reply arrived seconds later. That's pathetic. Exactly. The following day, Dad tried a different approach. His email arrived just after lunch. Less emotional, more calculated. The classic reasonable parent routine. Nellie, families have disagreements. You are? Overreacting. Vanessa simply required more support growing up. We all love you. That last sentence nearly made me choke. Love? Was this what love looked like? Forgetting birthdays? Ignoring accomplishments? Treating one daughter like a princess and the other like furniture? Dad finished with a request. Let's meet for coffee and talk like adults. I didn't respond. Because adults don't threaten their children with inheritance when they refuse to accept mistreatment. Adults take responsibility. Adults apologize. Adults don't rewrite history. That evening, I showed both emails to Robert. He read them quietly, then folded his hands. You know what real family never does? What? They never make you earn their love. The room went silent, because deep down, I knew he was right. My entire life had been an audition. Every achievement, every success, every sacrifice. I'd been trying to earn something that should have been freely given. Acceptance, love, pride. And no matter what I did, it was never enough, because the rules had always been rigged. A week later, another surprise arrived. An Instagram message request. Vanessa. I almost deleted it without reading. Almost. Instead, I opened it. Nellie, can we talk? This has gone too far. I rolled my eyes. Apparently, distancing myself from toxic people was now considered excessive. Her next messages arrived quickly. Mom and Dad mean well. They've always loved you. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I stared at the screen, then finally replied. This isn't about one birthday. A few seconds later. What do you mean? The question actually made me angry. After everything, she genuinely didn't understand. Or maybe she didn't want to. It's about 21 years of being treated like I matter less. The typing bubble appeared instantly. You know, Mom and Dad had to focus on me more. There it was. The excuse. The same excuse I'd heard my entire life. You were independent. I needed help. You were stronger. As though being responsible somehow justified neglect. As though my pain counted less because I hid it better. I typed carefully. Needing help doesn't mean I deserved less love. For the first time, Vanessa didn't respond immediately. Several minutes passed. Then came the guilt trip. Do you really want to lose your family over this? I smiled sadly. Because that question revealed everything. They still thought I was the one breaking the family apart. Not the people who spent years pushing me away. Me. I typed one final response. I didn't lose my family, Vanessa. I finally realized I never had one. Then, I blocked her. Again, the conversation ended. The chapter ended. And as I placed my phone face down on the table, something unexpected happened. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel regret. I felt free. Completely free. But what I didn't know yet was that the most important moment of my life wasn't the birthday they ruined. It was something that would happen only a few weeks later. A moment that would finally show me what real family actually looked like. A few weeks passed after I blocked my parents and Vanessa. For the first time in years, my life felt peaceful. No guilt trips. No comparisons. No constant reminders that I somehow mattered less than my sister. I spent more time with Mason and his family. The more time I spent around them, the more I realized how different healthy relationships felt. One Saturday afternoon, I was having lunch at their house when Robert suddenly looked at me and said, "Nellie, I want you to know something." The table grew quiet. "I'm not trying to replace your parents," he continued, "but you're family to us. Not because you're dating Mason, because we chose you." The words hit harder than he probably realized. My own parents had spent 21 years making me feel unwanted. Yet here was someone who had known me for a fraction of that time telling me I belonged. Later that day, Robert handed me a small box. Inside was a key. I looked at him, confused. "What's this?" "A key to the house," he said casually. "If you ever need anything, you're welcome here." I stared at the key. To anyone else, it was just a piece of metal. To me, it meant trust, acceptance, a place where I didn't have to earn my right to exist. That was the moment I truly understood something. Family isn't always the people you're born to. Sometimes, it's the people who choose you. A few days later, I heard that my parents were still telling people I had abandoned the family. Apparently, Mom said I was ungrateful. Dad said he was disappointed. Vanessa claimed she didn't understand why I was acting this way. For once, none of it bothered me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done. Then one evening, I received a final message from Dad. "I hope you're happy, Nellie. Just remember, you walked away from your family. Don't come back when you realize what you've lost." I read it once. Then I laughed. Because he still didn't understand. I hadn't lost anything. I hadn't walked away from family. I had walked away from neglect, from disappointment, from spending my life begging people to care. I never replied. There was no point. Today, birthdays are different. Holidays are different. My life is different. Now I spend those moments with people who actually want me there. People who remember without being reminded. People who make room for me at the table. Sometimes, I think back to my 21st birthday and how devastated I felt sitting alone in my room. At the time, it felt like the worst day of my life. Looking back, it was actually the day that changed everything, because it forced me to stop chasing people who never valued me. And once I finally let go, I found something better, a family that chose me.